Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first Checkerboard chat of the fall semester. We are so excited to have you here today. My name is Jordan Pruitt, and I serve as the Associate Director for Special Events at the University of Tennessee. And it is my privilege to be joined today by Dena Oneal. Dena is a 1992 graduate of the University of Tennessee, and today she is going to share images and her experiences as a volunteer with the National Park Service at Stones River Battlefield. Dena actually attended UTK as a second-generation student. She showed me a picture before we got started of her father's graduation, so I'm sure she'll share that with everybody in just a second. But she attended the Learning Lab preschool at the age 3 and returned to start her undergraduate degree at age 18. She was a member of the United Residence Hall Association, the National Student Speech, Language, Hearing Association, and a member of the UT Knoxville Women's Choral, as well as played intramural volleyball. She graduated with a degree in Speech Pathology, studying under Dr. Luper and Silverstein. So we are so excited, Dena, for you to share some of your experiences with us today. I do want to start by telling everybody that I will be here to have any questions that you have. So if you have any questions for us, please put those into any of the comments on any of the platforms that you're watching, and I'll be more than happy to share those with Dena, and we'll answer any questions you have for her throughout her chat. So Dena, I'm going to turn it over to you. The floor is yours. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. Yes, I was sharing with Jordan that I was going through a bookcase and came across some pictures, and that is actually a picture of my dad graduating from UT Knoxville, and I am the one hanging over his top hat there with cute cheeks there. And we joke that I went to UT coming and going. So I am thrilled to be here to talk to you today about the National Park Service. It is a passion of mine. I grew up as a military child, so we lived all over the United States, and I'm fairly sure my father took us to every national park within 100 miles of any place we ever lived. Just a few quick things about the National Park Service. You can find photos about the National Park Service by looking up the hashtag #FindYourPark. The Park Service began in 1916 and is a part of the Department of Interior. I live in the Tennessee area, which is considered the South Atlantic Gulf region. And when you think of the National Park Service, a lot of people think of Yellowstone National Park and things of that nature, but the Park Service actually incorporates a lot of other locations. They have national battlefields, national battlefield parks, national historic sites, national monuments, national memorials, and things like that, totaling up to that 423 units that you see there. So volunteering with the National Park Service is very easy. You go to volunteer.gov and submit an application. They'll review that application, they'll conduct an interview in many cases, and check your references. So it is a little bit of an involved situation, but it's really, really worth it. So for me, that's what I did. I ended up talking to our lead ranger, Jim Lewis, who is the Interpretation, Education, and Cultural Resource Management Programs Manager. You would talk to whoever is his equivalent at your local national park. Groups or companies can also volunteer. You use that same website and you look for the Adopt a Section program or contact your local ranger. And you can go in and, for example, they need volunteers to come in and maybe rebuild fences or pull up weeds. Or for us, we have a national cemetery in addition to the park. So we have volunteers that come in, companies that'll come in and they'll clean the headstones. So there's lots of different opportunities depending upon the amount of time you have available, and they'll help you kind of pick and choose that. So why do I volunteer? Well, as I mentioned, I came from a military family. We visited every park within 100 miles of any place we ever lived. We love national parks, and my son, who's in that picture there, adored the park. He became a junior ranger. That's what he's doing right there. He's being sworn in as a junior ranger. And that is him at about second grade age. He has now graduated with a history degree from UT Chattanooga. So our love of history as a family really impressed him and ended up becoming a real passion of his own. So that's why I volunteer. Now, parks are more than just going and taking some great photographs and having a great time with your family. They also have an economic impact on your local community. So Jordan, if you can go to the next one. So for us, Stones River National Battlefield, you can see has a $34.6 million economic output that hits camping, gas, groceries, hotels, restaurants, retail, transportation, and secondary effects. It impacts labor income, value added. It really helps your local economy in addition to supporting and helping others discover history. So let's talk about the Battle of Stones River, because that's what my local park is all about. I live near Stones River National Battlefield, okay? So the Battle of Stones River occurred between December 31st, 1862 to January 2nd, 1863. It was cold. It was rainy. It was miserable. When you come out to the park now, you see lots of trees, and they're very high and they're grown. A lot of that wasn't there then. You've got to keep in mind, time has passed. Those have grown since then. It was really farmland. It had been cleared for farming. So what they were really doing is the two sides were vying for position for economic reasons and for transportation reasons. And because of that, they really threw all they had at this conflict. And it did become what is considered the bloodiest conflict, or one of the bloodiest conflicts of the Civil War. It had the highest percentage of casualties for war. So the North did take control of central Tennessee at the end of it all, which was great for the North, terrible for the South. But really what we talk about a lot here at the park is the loss of life. It really impacted families near and far away. They lost 4 brigadier generals who were either killed immediately or mortally wounded. They had roughly a 36% casualty rate for just the Confederate side. So this was a very difficult battle. So when I go out and I do photography for the Park Service, they will let me know, hey, we're having this event. This happens to be at Fort Rosecrans, which is part of the National Battlefield. They are doing a cannon demonstration here. And for me, usually the photographs that I turn in are color photographs, but for my creative side, after I send in those photographs, I do like to sometimes put a filter on them. Here you can see it's more of a sepia filter, and it's a soldier walking away. Just to me, the impression of he looks very tired was really how they really felt at the end of it all. Extreme tiredness, sadness, destruction. This next slide is from one of the oldest Civil War monuments still standing in its original space, and that was created at the end of the battle. It is the Hazen Brigade Monument at Stones River. It was created by Colonel William Babcock Hazen, who led the 9th Indiana, the 41st Ohio, the 6th Kentucky, and the 110th Illinois. They sustained 409 casualties, or 29% of the brigade. 45 men died at that crest where it's located, and they actually interred the dead in the walls of the monument. And there are actually, when you look at it, it's stone. There's a stone wall all the way around, and then the stone monument in the middle. And the unit's 17 officers, their names are engraved on all 4 sides. And then there are headstones throughout the area. So that is a very important Civil War monument, and we have it located here right in Middle Tennessee. I love this picture. This is from one of the living history events where you have people who come in, they come in very authentic uniforms, and they are recreating camp life. So you have soldiers, you have people who are there, women who are there who were the camp followers, they have tents set up, they have all kinds of things going on, and the kids can walk right up to them and ask them a million questions, and they love to tell them the stories because they've really researched these soldiers and the people that were there during that time, and they try to share that with anybody who's willing to listen. You know, the next one. So there's a campsite there, so they set it up right there. This was during a fall event, because the winter one, when I say cold and rainy, I mean cold and rainy. But this was a fall event, and they actually camped out overnight. So you could drive by at night and see the tents and see the fires going, and they would stay usually a long weekend. So you could come by and talk to them and find out about camp life during that time. Here's another one. This is typically how they would set up their rifles. It was quick and easy to grab them when they would set them up in a tree like this. Their bedrolls are there laid out. Not everybody could afford a tent. If you were Confederate, you generally did not have anything that was issued from the Southern government because of lack of funds. The North did have better funding, and so they tended to have more in terms of consistent items throughout camp. But you can see the National Cemetery in the background, and for me, that was always something that made me stop and think, because you have the quote-unquote battle here, camp here going on of the before, and then the cemetery in the background of the after effects of the battle.
Dena, I did want to ask a question real quick. We
Sure.
did have a question come through about the actors that are portraying the soldiers and going through these demonstrations. Are those individuals also park volunteers that have gone through that process to be involved with the park, or how do those people get involved with that process?
Yes, they are volunteers. They are counted as part of the volunteers. They typically volunteer with their living history regiment and are kitted out through them. They help them gather the appropriate materials, and then they are invited by the park to attend these events. And these are annual things that generally go on. So they kind of already have it on their calendars of, oh, this is going to be coming up. Like, we always know they're going to try to do things during between Christmas and New Year's for the anniversary of the Battle of Stones River. And then there are other things throughout the year that they'll do. They'll have an event where cavalry come in with their horses. That's a different set of volunteers. You'll have cannon demonstrations throughout the summer. That's a special group of volunteers trained by the head ranger. So they are volunteers. I believe they volunteer with that regiment and then come in as a group as volunteers.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for answering that.
Sure. So this next photo is when They will sometimes do shooting demonstrations. So it'll be a group shooting demonstration, which when you look at history, that's very much a British style of fighting war. They would line up, they would call a count, they would shoot. These were single shot muskets, so it is not quick to reload. So they got to quickly, ram it, clear it, the whole 9 yards. Really, more of a, I guess you call it guerrilla style fighting developed during the Civil War. It was used some in the Revolutionary War, but it really developed even more during the Civil War in order to better survive, honestly. Because when you're standing like this, how difficult do you think it is to aim a cannon at it? A group of people like that, right? Pretty easy. One cannonball would take that whole group out. So this is one of the ladies who does a living history demonstration. She has there on her table some of the quote unquote medicines that they would create themselves, that they were using from plant items. They would show a typical soap candy of that time. She's doing a sewing demonstration also, and she is dressed completely in period attire. So she's a wonderful person to talk to. She knows a lot of her history in terms of women during that time period being camp followers versus maybe officers' wives who sometimes would travel with officers. Here's another, this is during the December to January time period. So there is no goose down lined coats going on here during this when you are participating in this living history event. You have the fireside to sit by, and you have lots of different woolen pieces of clothing to put on, which during the fall and the winter and early spring are not so bad. They keep you warm. But when they do the summer demonstrations and they're in a wool uniform, long sleeve, long pants, that is hot to wear. I mean, I get hot, I have short sleeves. This is the uniform I have to wear when I go to volunteer. I have my name badge here. I have on the side here my patch that shows that I am a volunteer. I wear this anytime I am going out in official capacity to photograph. And I have to wear khaki pants. And then usually I have hiking boots that I wear because I don't know where I'm going to be out in the grass or the undergrowth or what I'm going to climb on. So typically I'll wear hiking boots with it. But I'll have that, and then I have like a small backpack that carries my camera and a couple of lenses that I use. So there's another one of our volunteers. This is going to be a summertime demonstration. You can see it again. He's in long sleeves, suspenders, woolen pants, and that hat would stay on while outside to try and give him some shade. So this is an example of a cannon demonstration. So they will typically in the demonstrations only fire 1, maybe 2 cannons at a time because of the crew that it takes to do this and the time that it takes to do this. They'll explain what they're about to do. They'll give a little bit of background behind it. Then they'll have everybody back up. What you can't see in the photograph is it is roped off. You cannot be within a certain distance of the front of the cannon there for safety reasons. So that was me using a very long distance lens to make it appear close up. And there, the after effects of firing that cannon, lots of smoke. It's very loud. It startles the kids. A lot of times you'll turn around, the kids are like this. But they're smiling and having a great time because they think somebody firing a cannon is the best thing they've seen all day. So There's where you can see the roping off. You can see some of the living history volunteers walking away, and you can see the head of the crew giving a talk about the cannons. He's talking about the mechanics of it, how the crew works, how everybody has different jobs around the cannon, and so forth. So this is another experience of the park. So this is National Park Day. National Park Day is a national event where they have volunteers come in. We have another university nearby who brings a lot of their college students in for their volunteer hours. And then they have Boy Scouts, community groups, and so forth. And every year the Park Service will choose a different part of the park for us to go in and clean up. So one year it might be along the river because part of our land goes along the river. And so you're cleaning up weeds, brush, you're cutting back limbs that are over the paths. You might be re-graveling something. You might be planting something. There's a lot going on. You're picking up trash, a variety of things like that. But this is like a big one-day blitz. And then at the end of it all, they'll come back together. The head park ranger will thank everybody. And then usually they'll have a grill out as a thank you to the volunteers. And then everybody just kind of sits and chats and, you know, talks about their different experiences. And it really is a fantastic community day to participate in. So this is one where part of the park goes along the Stones River. And so you can see they're getting some water to kind of wash off a pathway because that section of the path floods when the river gets too high. So,
Dena, another question that we had come in, I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. One of the questions we had was, do you know how many annual visitors the Stones River battlefield and cemetery typically average on any given year?
That I don't know. No, I don't.
I'll try to do some research while you keep talking, and I'll see if I can.
That they recently, if you Google it, they recently released a report for the Stones River National Battlefield. The Park Service did.
I will take a
look.
And
it should have that information in it.
Okay. I'll take a look while I'll keep going while you keep talking.
Okay. I think I mentioned, you know, part of the volunteering might be spending a day helping them rebuild fences. As you can see, the fences are not super complicated. It is literally just dropping the boards that have been drilled already and just restacking them correctly. We lose them for a variety of reasons: flooding, winds. There are sections that are along some roadways where you'll lose it to people going off the road and kind of plowing through the fence. But, you know, there's all kinds of different reasons. And so the fence is important. So this is super important. This is Fort Rosencrantz, which is part of the park. It's in a different part of town. And the reason this walkway is super important is because it made it all accessible for people. So walking across grass, as a lot of us know, is super difficult for anybody who has a walker, a wheelchair, a cane, difficulty with gait, anything like that. And so this wooden walkway allows anybody of any ability to be able to access the park and be able to view it just like anybody else would. And so I'm really proud of our park doing that.
I will say, Dena, I did find the answer.
Oh, yay!
Yeah. So Dena and I actually connected because I'm from Rutherford County also, and it says that the national park is the biggest tourism pool to Rutherford County and averages over 200,000 visitors a year. So
it feels like more. It really feels like more.
Yeah.
People are out there every single day. It is never quiet. There is never a quiet time, it feels like. I can go out there and there are always people at the Welcome Center, in a small museum, or at one of the locations where you can read the signs and view the monuments. So this is Ranger John. He is with one of the kids who is trying to become a junior ranger. And the way you become a junior ranger is you are given that booklet that you see when you check in at the Welcome Center. And then as you go around the park, you answer questions. And once you answer a certain number of questions, you take it back to the desk and they will review it. And if your answers are right, they gently help the kids through finding the right answer. And then they swear them in as junior rangers. They get a little badge or a sticker, and the kids love it. They just think it's a fantastic thing. And there are 2 kids being sworn in right there by one of our Park Service employees. So that is right outside the back of the Welcome Center. Ugh. That is one of my favorite photos. There's 2 in here that I took that vie for my top 2. This one, to me, this is a volunteer. He was there during one of the National Park Days volunteering, and he was just kind of propped up there. And just the look he had on his face was so serious, and to me, just seems so representative of what, in my mind's eye, a soldier would look like. Maybe a little dirtier, but that sadness and sternness that he kind of had going on. The park is important for more than just history and economic purposes. It's also a huge home to plants and wildlife at the park. They have a limestone cedar glade located there. It's a fragile ecosystem that is supported by highly specialized plant species, many of which they don't exist anywhere else in the world other than here in this park. Cedar glades have very thin soil with exposed rocky patches by red cedar trees. During the summer, the glades will be really hot and dry. Unfortunately, that also typically means snakes around here. So I'm not a fan of the rocky areas during the summer. The Stones River National Battlefield Area supports 232 documented plant species that include a concentration of rare species, most of which are part of the Nashville Basin Limestone Glade Ecological System. I was so excited when I came across this deer. I'd actually stopped the car to take a picture of something else and just kind of glanced to the side and saw this deer just kind of hanging out in the grass, just kind of, being about his best self there, I guess. But the park holds more than just your typical deer that you think of. It holds 29 species of amphibians and numerous birds, fish, and other mammals. So it's very important. Okay, so now we're moving on over to the National Cemetery. This is one of the memorials over there that, as you can see, has several different units who were killed or died of wounds received at the Battle of Stones River. The cemetery is a closed cemetery. So what that means is it is no longer open to burials. So for example, my father, who's a veteran, can be buried in a national cemetery of his choosing if they have space available. He cannot be buried at Stones River though, because it is closed. The only burials that I was last told could be there were if the spouse was already buried there and then the other spouse passed away, then they could be buried there. Other than that, it's a closed cemetery. Many events, though, do occur in remembrance of all of these soldiers and the sacrifices that they've held. And they will come and they will lay wreaths and they will talk about some of the sacrifices given. And it's an extremely moving event to be a part of. That is the laying of the wreath. So at Christmas time, we have wreaths across America, which I think many people have heard of. And that is where they try to coordinate with national battlefields and with the cemeteries to lay one wreath for every soldier in remembrance to honor them for their sacrifice. They say the name of every single veteran aloud as they lay the wreath. Approximately 7,000 wreaths are needed at the Stones River National Cemetery, but I believe the most that have ever been donated are 2,000. The donation of a wreath is typically $15, and then multiples become less expensive. You can go to wreathsacrossamerica.org to find out more, and you can select the Stones River National Cemetery or a national cemetery close to you if you would like to help out in this way. Okay, so we get lots of questions about this all the time. Why do people put a coin on top of the gravestone? So a coin left on top of the gravestone lets the deceased soldier's family know that somebody stopped by to pay their respects. And it depends on the coin as to how close the relationship is. So a penny means you visited. A nickel means you and the deceased veteran trained at boot camp together. A dime means you and the deceased veteran served together in some capacity. When they clean the headstones, typically they will collect the coins, and the coins go back into the upkeep of the headstones. So it's another great way that if you just want to help out, you can do that. But it's really cool when you can find a nickel or a dime on those. This is during the summertime. There are cannons located to kind of show during the Battle of Stones River how some of the cannons were facing during the battle. And as you can see, there are signs that are located typically around it to tell you some of the history. So this one specifically talks about how the artillery protected the supply line that came out of Nashville. Okay, so I always love to throw this picture in because everybody says, what is that? From time to time, it is good caregiving of the land to do a controlled burn to mimic possibly a natural wildfire that would come through. It provides a lot of nutrients to the ground. It gets rid of invasive weeds possibly that have come into the area, and it gives the volunteer firefighting staff and the local firehouses practice in a controlled situation of what to do in case a fire were to break out. This isn't done very often, but this is an example of McFadden Farm, which is another part of the battlefield. It's located next to the river, the Stones River, where they had done a controlled burn there. This is also located at McFadden Farm. It is the big memorial located there. And if you looked behind the memorial, that behind and to the left of the memorial would be the Stones River. And people were there for another National Park Day to do a cleanup. Okay, so this is my favorite photo. This is just the main portion of the park. There's this tree that's just out there by itself in the middle of this field, and it was sunset. And I just was in the right place at the right time, and the clouds just helped give it kind of a dramatic effect. And I love the colors and just the positioning of everything. And that's why it's one of my favorite. So we have time for question and answer. If anybody has any additional questions about the Park Service, how to become a volunteer, or the Stones River National Battlefield.
And Dena, I had one other question that came in
Yeah.
while you were chatting. So, have you ever volunteered at another national park while being a volunteer primarily, I know, at Stones River? Have you ever gone anywhere else and done any volunteer work at any other parks?
Yes, typically as a photographer, because I'm in the system as a photographer volunteer. When we go to other parks, I will usually ask for the card of the ranger who deals with volunteers. And then I will send them any photos that I take because I can't help myself. Like, that is my relaxation. That is my happy place, is behind the camera. And so I take pictures everywhere I go. And so I send them those photos, and that's my way of giving back.
Yeah, definitely. Well, another way that you were able to give back was by doing this presentation for us today. We cannot say thank you enough for your time and your expertise that you shared with us. Thank you so much for walking us through some of your experiences, especially at Stones River, a place that is near and dear to my heart as well. So thank you again for your time today. Everyone, we do this series once a month. And so Dena is getting our semester off on the right foot with this chat, but we will be back in September for another chat as well. So be on the lookout for that. But just want to say thank you again to our Vols all across the nation who watched today, as well as to Dena right here in Tennessee, who gave some of her time back to the university today. So thank you so much, Dena. We really appreciate you. And thank you for being a Vol for life.
No problem.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.